Okay, friends, it's good to see you all. 127 screens and growing, and we'll have more friends join. We are recording this call so that others will be able to watch as well. I just have to start by saying how moved I have been in the last few days by the response to our trip. I received a call, actually not a call, I received an email on Tuesday afternoon at about 1 o'clock from UJA Federation saying we want to bring a mission of rabbis to the Poland-Ukraine border. And if you're interested in going, please send your passport number by 4 p.m. today. And I called Alyssa, and she graciously, generously agreed to let me go. So I want to thank Alyssa for allowing me to go, and all of you for supporting me in this journey. The outpouring of support, spiritual support that you offered and good wishes has meant so much to me. And the outpouring of generosity that so many of you showed by responding to the financial appeal to the World Union for Progressive Judaism appeal and other appeals financially has been immensely appreciated. At the end of this call, I'll mention a few organizations that if you want to support financially, I mean, obviously there are many, 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 but 3 that we've particularly seen in action in our time here. And also additionally, the overwhelming support when we put a call out for specific items to bring to the synagogue that I could bring to the border. I have to say that the entire lobby classroom, formerly known as the lobby library, was pretty much filled to the brim, which was absolutely amazing. And pushing my luck with Lot Polish Airlines, I was able to bring 5 massive bags of supplies of Tylenol and wet wipes and diapers and tracksuits and women's underwear and children's underwear and a whole bunch of other items that people brought. And I was able to bring, I'm going to say 10% of what you brought to the synagogue, because even breaking Lot Polish Airlines rules of luggage, I couldn't have possibly carried more. We figure that I brought about 350 pounds of items donated by all of you, and all the rest of the items that you donated, we will be getting to Poland and Ukraine in the coming days. And I know Amy Schwach, our executive director, had a meeting today that was about working with a Ukrainian church in the city who has ways of getting material here. So everything that you donated will make its way to Poland and Ukraine. I want to say a few words and just start by acknowledging that this is all raw for me. It's been a very whirlwind trip. We landed in Warsaw yesterday, Sunday, about 1 p.m. in the afternoon, and it's now 11 p.m. on Monday evening here, 11:05. And my thoughts are on scraps of hotel stationery, but I promise that by Friday night services, this is a plug, I will have more formed thoughts that I look forward to sharing with you. But I didn't want the moment to pass to be able to reach out and connect with all of you who've been so kind and generous in your support of this journey, to tell you a little bit about where we've been in the last 2 days, and just to say a few words about what the impact has been. I will say again, with 165 screens on, which is amazing, that if you have a question that you want to ask, I'd encourage you to put it in the chat, because there's just no way that we'll be able to have everybody unmute and ask questions in this format. So let me say a word about what we've seen. First of all, I'm on a mission with a total of 18 rabbis from the tri-state area, organized by UJA Federation, and I cannot say enough about the incredible work that UJA is doing. And really, our mission was to bring support to refugees, bring support to the incredible workers and institutions and organizations that are doing work here on the ground, to witness the pain that so many are feeling on both sides of the border, and to witness the incredible work that UJA Federation is doing. UJA Federation New York has committed in the last 2 weeks $5 million for this relief effort, and I'm guessing that more will be forthcoming. We just had dinner with UJA Federation leaders who are also here in Poland and across the country. I believe UJA has allocated $25 million so far to this relief effort. So I will preview my recommendations that I'll make at the end about how you can support this effort. One of the organizations, of course, that I encourage you to support is UJA Federation. We arrived in Warsaw, as I said, yesterday afternoon, about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We made our way to the JCC in Warsaw. If you've been to the 92nd Street Y or the JCC on the west side, you know what a JCC is. The JCC in Warsaw and the JCC in Krakow do the same kind of amazing work that the JCCs that we know and love in the city do. And it was the first place that we saw. It was the first place that we saw, and it was the first place that we saw that became a series of places that, as of 15 days ago, didn't know the first thing about refugee response, didn't know the first thing about refugee resettlement, didn't know the first thing about finding housing for refugees. And for our congregation, Shari Tefillah, that I am so proud of, and I know you are too, that has worked so hard to settle an Iraqi family a few years ago, the Al-Abaidi family, and soon another refugee family that so many of you have generously supported. Shari Tefillah has walked the walk of helping to resettle refugees, and it's work that I'm really proud of, and I hope you are too. And just like our team at Shari Tefillah did not know the first thing about helping welcome refugees, but an incredible group of lay leaders, many of whom are here on this call. We figured it out in short order, and every organization, every Polish person that we met in the last 36 hours has gone from not knowing anything or having this be their full-time work to learning so much and working so hard. We started the JCC in Warsaw, heard about their mission in general, and heard about the work that they're doing to help settle refugees. Towns like Warsaw and Krakow and Lublin, other Polish cities are taking in thousands and thousands of refugees. We were told that in the last 2 weeks, the population of Warsaw has increased 15%. You think the rents are high in New York? They are, but you almost cannot find a place to rent or stay in Poland. Of the 2.8 million or so refugees that is said have fled Ukraine so far, 1.6 million or so have come to Poland. And so the work is just unimaginable. And even the organizations like the JCC that could see and were trying to prepare for something terrible that they were afraid was going to happen, they couldn't have imagined the scope and the scale of what's happened so far, and who knows where it's going from here. So they're doing work in Warsaw. We then made our way, headed towards Lublin, which is a couple of hours closer to the border with Ukraine. And we stopped in a Jewish community center in a little town outside of Warsaw, a transit center. I mean, it's basically like a sort of a Jewish clubhouse, and has been for decades and decades and decades. It's been transformed into a transit center for families. Right now, there are 40 families staying there, but they come and go. Again and again, we heard different stories from refugees. Some are staying close to the border because they're hoping to go back to Ukraine. Ukraine is their home. Some are hoping to start a new life in Poland. Some are looking for a new life somewhere else. And so these refugees that are just outside of Warsaw have all of those stories. And it is there where I delivered the 350 pounds of incredible generosity material that we gathered at Shari Tefillah. We unpacked it there. I have pictures of all this that I'll share some of on Friday evening at services. And we met the president of the Warsaw Jewish community there. He spoke about the work they're doing to really ramp up and learn on the fly how to do this work. We made our way to Lublin, and we stayed overnight there last night. And really, the prime reason that we did that was so that we were a couple hours closer to the border. We were up at 6 o'clock this morning. We were out at 6 o'clock this morning to make our way to the border. I'm learning how to pronounce Polish names. So we were at Przemysl, which is a town just a few miles from the Ukrainian border. And we were at Medyka, I think is the name of the town where the train station is, right at the border with Poland and Ukraine. When I told my mother, who I know is on this call, that I was going on this journey, and she was understandably anxious, I assured her that we were hundreds of miles away from where the fighting had been taking place. And that was true until yesterday, when the base that was attacked and 35 or more were killed, that it was about 20 miles from the border, right where we were. And so it sort of changed the tenor of our anticipation of today, to be honest. And when we drove towards the border, we could see F-16s flying on the Polish side. So the feeling was of what was going to be a heavy day was even more so. And my heart is rent, I think, is all I can say, especially from the experiences of today. It's rent for the people of Ukraine who are fleeing from their homes, most with nothing. And I think as Jews, we all have stories like that in our families. Not so long ago, where our families were running with very little. My heart is rent for the incredible, brave heroism of the Polish people, who, as we also know as Jews, have not always been in our recent history so hospitable. They have turned their lives upside down. They have opened their hearts and their homes. Waldemar, who is a new member of our congregation, his family lives in Gdansk in Poland. And Waldemar told me the other day that his family, I think, has 6 or 8 refugees living in their home, just opened their doors. And all over Poland, that has been the story. And everywhere we went, we're staying across from the train station in Warsaw. We had leftover boxes of boxed lunches from today. We walked across, when we came back to the hotel here, we walked across to the train station where there are just hundreds and hundreds of refugees. And we brought over our sort of meager leftover boxed lunches. And there was a whole setup there of Poles who had brought food, and they were handing it out to people just on the street there to do whatever they could. And we saw that everywhere. Today at the border, some of the people leading the effort to welcome these refugees include a couple that we met who before 2 weeks ago, what they did is they run an Airbnb. That's what they do. That's their business. They have a little Airbnb. And they heard about what was happening, and they said, we know a little something about hospitality. And all of a sudden they are helping to lead the effort at the Medyka transit entry place for refugees. And they are mobilizing all of their friends. They called their friends that first weekend of the war. They said, would you come up and help for the weekend? And 2 weeks later, they're all still here helping. We met another organizer of this effort, and he and his friends, what they do when there's not a war in Poland is they organize music festivals. People who organize music festivals know something about getting food for lots of people and getting bathrooms for lots of people and making sure that everybody has a place to stay. People are calling on their experiences just in their ordinary lives to help people who are in need. And it is beautiful and powerful and inspiring. And in addition to the Jewish professionals that we've met, like the directors of the JCCs in Warsaw and Krakow, who have overturned their entire program, their entire staff work, and everything they do to welcome refugees, to settle them in homes, to get them health care and emotional support. The JCC in Warsaw, I'm in Krakow, the director was with us today, and he told us that yesterday they did a walking tour of Krakow with these families, because they just needed to be able to do something with them that wasn't just them sitting and wondering what was going on back home. This is a refugee crisis of massive proportions, and is a refugee crisis almost entirely of women and children. Men in Ukraine who are between 18 and 60 years old are not allowed to leave the country. So what you see at the transit stations, what you see at the airport, are massive numbers of strollers. We sometimes joke at the synagogue, and like when we have nursery school, all the strollers come, tons of strollers, very little luggage, and no men at all, just women and children. And we met with some refugees who described leaving their partners, their husbands behind. And it's just heartbreaking. Today we visited 3 sites on the border. One was the border itself, where we witnessed refugees coming across, and dozens of NGOs, non-governmental organizations, right at the border crossing. Over the last 2 weeks, it's gone from an extremely chaotic situation right there to a much more organized situation. The first tent right at the border at Medica is a big tent set up by the state of Israel with a big Israeli flag there. And so we met with Israeli medical professionals who are there, and social workers and others who are helping out there. And one of the questions someone on our group asked was, "Do you only help Jews?" And was probably the line of the trip for me. The head medic there said, in Hebrew, he said, "Selection was something that happened here in Poland 70 years ago. We don't do selection. We welcome everyone." And that was a remarkable thing to hear. So even though I'm here with a Jewish organization that funds largely Jewish organizations on the ground, whether that's the JCCs or the Joint Distribution Committee or other organizations, we're not only helping Jewish people, they're helping everybody who comes. So we were on the border there, and we watched people come across with very little. And as soon as they cross, there are people there, Jews, Christians, and Muslim organizations, and Sikh organizations, and non-religious organizations with immediate needs, with food and drink and clothing and the kinds of hot tea and coffee for people who've been traveling in many cases for 6 days. And if those people don't have a particular place to go, and one of the things that we heard along the way was that initially the people who fled first, on average, tended to be people who had a place to go. In other words, somewhere in the world were people that they could go and be with. So in the first couple of weeks, that was largely the story. People didn't necessarily always need so much help finding a place to be because they had relatives in somewhere else in Europe or in Canada or in the United States or Israel. What's already happening in these couple of weeks as the situation has worsened is that more and more people are leaving, fleeing but with no particular direction. And so for those people, when they cross the border, they're put on buses and taken to a local transit center, and that's where we went next. You've probably all been to the mall. You probably all have your favorite mall that you've been to. We walked into this space. I didn't know what it was going to be, and it turns out it was a mall. But every store was empty. Every store had been emptied. The jewelry store, I don't remember the whole list of all the places, but the jewelry store and the toy store and the furniture store had all been transformed. The jewelry store, I think, was a medical center that's staffed by an Israeli organization called Natan, and providing sort of first aid care. Another store was turned into a legal kind of aid passport sort of agency. Another store has been set up to help people try and figure out options as to where they could go. There's a whole store that's filled with social workers who are trying to provide emotional, and psychological support to people who have been through trauma. Tons of the stores that are clothing stores, but they're not the kind of clothing store you and I see in a mall. They're just filled with clothing that people can just come and take, who have left everything behind, and people sleeping everywhere, cots everywhere. Any store that isn't doing some other purpose has people sleeping in it, and everywhere in the hallways, just people. And the food court has been transformed by the World Kitchen. I forget, there's an organization called the World Kitchen, I think. And they are just basically, they've turned it into a soup kitchen. So people go there. They have a place to stay for a little bit until they figure out where they're going next. And then for many of them, they go on to the train station. And we went to the train station in Medika. And there again, the scene was unbelievable, just an overwhelming number of people. We saw, there was one table, but again, people bringing food that they had clearly just made in their house in Poland to feed people. There was one big, 6 foot long card table set up with a big map on it. And I don't have a lot of pictures of refugees because we were told, and understandably so, that, we weren't going to a zoo. We weren't going to take pictures of people and take selfies with people. So the pictures are mostly in my head of the people, but there were people gathered around a 6 foot table, and I just wanted to peek and see what was there. And it was a huge map of Europe. And I don't speak Polish, and I don't speak Ukrainian, and I don't speak Russian, but I could also see a timetable there, a train timetable there. And what they were clearly doing is explaining to people where the different trains were going. And these were people who were they didn't have a place to go. They didn't have family somewhere that they were going to. They just wanted to go someplace, and they were being shown on the map where they might go depending on which train they went on. So scenes like that today were just deeply affecting and emotional, both, again, as I said, the heartbreak of seeing people in so much suffering, and in lots of really small and medium and large ways, the heroism of volunteers who are helping, both professional organizations like the Red Cross and Natan and JDC and other organizations, and also just ordinary people who are just opening their hearts and their homes. Our donations, your donations, were so appreciated. When we were at the transit center outside of Warsaw, they were just overwhelmed. I brought a lot of bags, and my colleagues brought a lot of bags. So there were thousands of pounds of supplies that we dropped. And the families that were there were among the people helping to unpack them. And the gratitude was just immense. I don't know how many people know this, but our nursery school students at Shaarei Tefillah, the nursery school team told the kids last week that they didn't tell them where I was going. They just told them that I was going to visit some children and help children. And I'm going to get emotional. They made these beautiful cards. They painted cards, and they watercolored cards, and they made cards with stickers and everything else. And we delivered these cards to this relief center, and there's kids everywhere, and it was really beautiful to be able to bring something of the spirit of Shari Tefillah and something of the generosity of Shari Tefillah to people who need everything. They really need everything, and in small ways and medium ways, we were able to bring some of that. So as I draw towards a close with my comments, and again, more to say and more to show, and I'll do that on Friday night, my mind turns to the book of Esther. I know the Purim Spiel and the Purim Carnival was yesterday, and I heard it was amazing. I'm really just sorry that I wasn't there, but I heard it was incredible. Wednesday night, we have Tot Purim, and then our adult Megillah reading. I don't remember the times. Time has no meaning to me right now, and you can tell us what time it is or drop it in the chat so you can be there. But we're going to read the book of Esther, and there are lots of themes in Esther that feel relevant. Maybe you'll hear some more about them Friday night. But one I was thinking about was that you probably remember, and I was thinking about this, and I've of course known it before, but didn't really think about it. Esther invites Achashverosh and Haman to a banquet, and they come, and the Megillah doesn't say anything about what happens at that banquet. Achashverosh says to Esther, what's your wish? Even to the half of my kingdom, as I try and say on a regular basis to Alyssa, even to the half of my kingdom. And Esther's only ask is that they come to another banquet the next night. And they do. And it's at that banquet where Esther, where the king says again, what is your wish, my queen, even to the half of my kingdom? And it's in that banquet that Esther speaks up on behalf of her people and calls out the evil that is being done. And I was just thinking today, it just occurred to me, like, I've never thought about why there was two banquets. The Megillah doesn't tell us. Like, I mean, why were there two banquets? Nothing happened at the first one other than an invitation to come to another one. And we don't know. The Megillah doesn't tell us, but what I was thinking was what Esther had to do to call out evil was hard and scary. As we know from the Megillah, she was afraid. She asked the people to fast. And she was willing to put her life on the line to call out evil. And I think maybe what happened is that she needed, the first night of the banquet, she was scared. She was scared to speak the truth, maybe scared to call out evil, put her own life at risk. But she continued, she invited them to come back again. And then by then she had gotten the courage to say what was true and what needed to be said. And I think that's the challenge to us. So many people have asked, what can they do? And I have some specific suggestions for you in the immediate term that I'll share in a minute. But here's the hard thing that will be a challenge for us to do. I'm going to come home on a plane tomorrow. I land back about 8 something tomorrow night, and I will be glad to see all of you. At some point, the buildings in New York are not going to all have blue and yellow, right? Like the Bloomberg building probably again tonight is going to be blue and yellow in honor of Ukraine. At some point, something else is going to happen in the world, and our attention is going to be drawn to that thing. And whatever else happens with this crisis in Ukraine, even if there's peace tomorrow, which doesn't seem likely, there's going to be 2.8 million or more refugees that have been displaced. And the real challenge for us, in addition to showing financial support, which so many of you have done, and I would encourage you to continue to do, and sending more supplies, which we've already done, and we will look at doing some more, is to not forget, not to lose focus, not to just move on with the news cycle. There has been some discussion online that I'll share with you that has been a little critical of our mission. from people who've said that this is really just crisis tourism. And we've had long conversations about that on our long bus rides. And I think where I'm at is this: is if I come home and I just go on to the next thing and forget this, it really will have been crisis tourism, and we'll have come and seen, and I will have told you some stories, and your heart will break perhaps too. And then the next thing will happen and we'll just move on. And the hard thing is to not just move on. There are people in need. There are Jewish people in need. Ukraine, before the war, had the fifth largest Jewish population in Europe, 200,000 Jews and more, and millions of other people. And the challenge, which I'm going to invite you to hold with me, is to figure out how we sustain our attention more than just in this moment. So I'm going to turn to questions here in a second. I'll ask Amy to drop into the chat. There are many organizations that are helping right now. And if you already have your organization, that's great. But three that I've been recommending include the World Union for Progressive Judaism, which represents the progressive reform congregations in Ukraine, of which there are, I think, 10. Many of you have already been supportive, and that's been immensely helpful and appreciative. We appreciate it. We shared a video from one of the rabbis in Ukraine who, I think in the weekly last week, that shared his story, his appreciation for our support, and the story of the fraught story that he's experiencing with his congregation. From a broader Jewish perspective, I'd encourage you to support UJA's emergency appeal, which is going to help these organizations on the ground that are doing the work of helping not only Jews, but anyone who asks. And the third is an organization called the AFIA Foundation. They exist. They're actually based in Yonkers, I think. Their warehouse is in Yonkers. And I think a group of our congregants may have gone in the past to help pack these big orange bags. We also brought these big bags from the AFIA Foundation. What they do is pack bags of medical supplies that they send all the time to areas of crisis. So if there's a tornado in the Midwest of the United States, AFIA is there with resources. And if there was a volcano, someone here. David, can we make sure that, hold on, I want to make sure that everybody's muted. Sorry, I lost. AFIA exists to help in all kinds of crises. So you can support afiafoundation.org. So let me see if I can see.
I wrote them down if you want, Rabbi.
Sure. Can you share them with me? Because I'm having a little bit of a hard time accessing.
So far I have how are donations transported?
How are donations transported? So, I mean, in different ways. I'm not sure I totally understand the question. Obviously, we are able to bring supplies to the border, but we didn't go into Ukraine. But all the AFIA supplies, which were much more intensive medical supplies that are clearly meant for the war zone that is in Ukraine. There are organizations within Ukraine that are trying to operate in difficult situations to bring supplies directly in. So supplies are coming to the border because those are needed on the border for the people who've come across. And obviously lots of supplies are also needed, within Ukraine. And we've met people along the border who take supplies in to Ukraine itself. So it depends on the nature of the supplies and where's the need. Some is on this side of the border, and obviously plenty of it is on the other side of the border as well.
We've been hearing about shelling at the Polish border. Are you anywhere near there?
So today the place where we were in Medica and Przemysl, I think is the name of the town. Turns out to have been about 20 miles from where the shelling was yesterday. There was nothing. Today. But what I will say is that what we were told when we were at the border was that the last few days had been a little bit quieter at that border checkpoint. But today, most likely as a result of what happened yesterday, there was a new influx of people from that area. We never felt unsafe, but we turned out to be a lot closer to where some of the shelling has been happening than we were before, because mostly Russia hasn't been targeting sites in the west of Poland, which is west of Ukraine. We were in eastern Poland, but yesterday that changed.
Can you say more about Jewish leaders of Poland that you're meeting? Are they Polish or are they from elsewhere?
They're Polish mostly. And we met with the chief rabbi of Poland, who happens to have born and raised in Queens, I think. Let's make sure everybody stays on mute, my friends, if you don't mind. I think the chief rabbi of Poland hails from New York for sure. But most of the leaders that we're meeting, most of the volunteers, most of the leaders, leaders of the JCCs, of the Jewish organizations, the rabbis, most of the rabbis that we've met here in Poland are Polish. They're not transplants for somewhere else. It is hard to imagine in lots of ways for those of us who, all of us who, it's hard to imagine Jewish life thriving in places like Poland and Ukraine and Germany. But there are thriving Jewish communities in all of those places again, these decades after the Holocaust. And so the leadership of these organizations is almost entirely Polish. And to be clear, organizations like the Joint Distribution Committee, they're not really doing the work at the border. They help locals sort of stand up to do the work. So there's really only like 2 staff from the JDC in the country. They're American, but they're not really mostly doing their work. They're helping in local areas to help the work happen from local people. So it's mostly Polish people that we've met who are leading these organizations and leading this effort.
Are you hearing or experiencing any anti-Semitic sentiment?
We have not. We've been told that anti-Semitism in Poland is resurgent, and obviously we've seen some of that. Actually, tonight at dinner, we heard from the brand new Israeli ambassador to Poland. Israel withdrew its ambassador a while back when Poland passed some pretty terrible laws with regards to Holocaust education and such. And he was asked tonight whether the fact that he was approved, his ambassadorship was approved a while back, but he wasn't placed until now because of these challenges with anti-Semitism in Poland. And he was asked, does that represent a change? And he said, it doesn't represent a change, but it represents a big part of my work, which is to undo or to try and rebuild what had previously been a fairly strong relationship between the state of Israel and Poland that has deteriorated in the last few weeks. One of the meetings that we're hoping to have in the coming weeks back in New York is with Polish Catholic leaders in New York to try and underscore the importance of combating anti-Semitism in Poland.
Is there kosher food for Jewish refugees?
There is kosher food for Jewish refugees who want it. And that's been a big focus for some of the Jewish organizations, is making sure that people have, the resources that they need, including if there's kosher food needed. So that's happening as well.
So it was noted that where the temple was on West 82nd Street now may be a Ukrainian church.
I believe that is true. And one of the commitments that I made, we were talking about our commitments tonight to each other and to ourselves as a result of what we saw, is, one thing is to encourage ourselves and all of you to continue to financially support these efforts and to, to do collections where collections make sense. But I think additionally, a step that we could take as a congregation is to, I was going to say, deepen our relationship with the Ukrainian community in New York, but I don't know that we have a relationship, as a congregation with the Ukrainian community in New York. And there's this significant one. And it's a good point that our former spiritual home is a Ukrainian church. So I think it's long overdue for me to come over to the West Side and meet the religious leaders there and see what kind of relationship we could have with them that I hope would last even beyond this terrible moment. So if anybody has any connections over there, definitely let me know. But even if not, we'll figure it out together.
Have you been briefed on the American response to the refugee situation?
Interestingly, we haven't been briefed, and we didn't really see American NGOs or American governmental organizations at the border now. So we asked about that tonight. Like, it was surprising to us, right? You have NGOs from all over the world, but not from the United States that we saw. But what we were told is that what we know is that this is one of 8 border crossings in Poland alone. So it doesn't mean that American resources aren't being allocated to this effort. We didn't see it in evidence at this border crossing or at this transit center, but it's a question that we should be asking. We didn't see it. I'm not saying it's not there, but it's a question we should be asking our elected officials. What is the United States doing with regards to assisting not only sort of militarily and supplies and such that the United States has been doing, and financial support to Ukraine, which is important, but additionally, what resources, and again, this is my own ignorance, I'm not saying it's not happening, but there needs to be active American involvement in supporting the work around refugee resettlement.
Can Poles that you've seen communicate with Ukrainian refugees, or are there translators?
Interestingly, what we're learning, and again, some of you might know this more than me, Polish and Ukrainian are not the same, but they rhyme. The Polish and Ukrainian apparently is a lot closer as a language as opposed to Polish and Russian, which is interesting. So it seems that the people who are, that are working on the border either, speak enough Ukrainian to get by. There are also translators available, but we are told that linguistically, Polish and Ukrainian are similar enough that people can communicate for the kind of essential communications that they're doing. And then there's plenty of people in the eastern half of Poland who speak some Russian or some Ukrainian, and some Ukrainians who speak a little bit of Polish. So people are getting by, it seems.
So there are many internally displaced people in Ukraine as well. Are you hearing of any organizations getting supplies in?
Yeah, so we are hearing of organizations that are doing that work. And it's increasingly dangerous, as you can imagine, right? When there are, when the more dangerous it is in Ukraine, the harder it is to get relief in. But this is the thing that's interesting too, and this gets maybe more in the weeds than we can get tonight at 11:45 in Poland, but there's a huge Jewish population in Russia. So when we wonder why Israel is playing an interesting kind of middle ground where we might say, well, why is the prime minister of Israel, going to meet with Putin or whatever? He should just be coming out against Putin. It's because Russia has a huge Jewish population. And so trying to make sure that Jews are safe in Ukraine and in Poland and in Russia is an important thing, a complicating factor. But that's an aside. There are organizations that are getting aid in, but it's increasingly difficult to do so. But there are people that are there are organizations that are getting aid in. There are also organizations that will we met a group of German missionaries today at McDonald's. That was where we ran into them. And they had driven, 9 of them, from Germany, and they were taking trips into Ukraine to just go and save people, to get people, go to Lviv, which is in Western Ukraine, and just put people in their car and who want to get out and can't, or are having a hard time. A lot of people who are having a hard time getting out are elderly people. I believe that we have a congregant, and I don't have permission to tell their story, so I don't want to name them, but we have one congregational family who has an elderly parent in Odessa, I think 95, and he doesn't want to leave, partially because Odessa hasn't been targeted yet, but also because the thought of the arduous process of trying to get out is scarier right now than the prospect of just staying where he is. And I think that's happening a lot, and it's more and more so. So there are organizations trying to help the people that are staying behind, whether that's either by helping them get out if they can, or providing resources if they can.
So what is the COVID situation there that you've seen, if any?
It's a good question. We're told that only about 30% of Ukrainians are vaccinated, and only about 50% of Poles are vaccinated. I will say that one of the questions that we asked when we were at this mall that had been converted into a transit center, one of the people in our group asked this Israeli doctor staffing, what's the COVID situation here in this mall that has hundreds of people jammed in together, because they're doing first aid. So one of the questions is, are you testing for COVID? And I will say that she said, I'm not really asking, because I'm sure there's COVID here, she said. But if someone tested positive for one of these refugees tested positive for COVID, where am I going to put them to isolate? She said, obviously COVID is real and it hasn't gone away, but right this second, it's actually not the most pressing thing. And to hear that was just its own kind of painful. So it's not great. We all have been masked, and we all got tested tonight because we have to in order to come to the United States, and every one of us tested negative. So we're good, but we will also test when we come back. But in terms of the people who are still here, it's difficult.
There have been reports of missionaries attempting to use aid and assistance as leverage to try and convert Jews. Have you heard or seen this, and how can we respond?
I haven't heard specific stories, but what I do know is wherever there is crisis, there are people that will try and take advantage of that crisis. So what we've heard about today is human trafficking, and all kinds of situations where people are trying to take advantage of people who are absolutely helpless. It's a good question what we can do. I haven't heard specifically about missionaries in that regard. We met these missionaries at the McDonald's, and the thought that they had driven into Ukraine yesterday to bring people out, I couldn't believe their bravery. And maybe it's just my naivete, so I plead that if that's part of what it is. But right now, most of the people, the people that we met are doing really sacred work. And it is a true fact that wherever there is crisis, there are people that are going to take advantage of the people that are in crisis. And again, I think probably the most important thing that we can do is ask our elected officials what's being done. And again, like American presence at the border crossings, for example, potentially could help scare off people who are otherwise, that are going to take advantage of people who are otherwise vulnerable. Let's take another question or two and we'll.
Sure. So have you met with anybody from the American Embassy?
We have not. So again, I wasn't involved in putting the itinerary together, but we as a group noted today to each other that we haven't felt an American presence here. So, some of it was no doubt the choice of the people who put the trip together. I'm sure they could have gotten us a meeting with the American ambassador, but it wasn't on the itinerary, and we have not noticed American aid directly, which doesn't mean it's not happening. It just means we haven't seen it. And I think those are the kinds of questions we should be continuing to ask.
So I know that you need to get rest because it's midnight there.
Right.
So
Right.
I think just a little bit, a lot of questions about, are we still collecting items and what may they need? Would it be something that they would need Shabbat candles or things for holidays that they may not have had because they've had to leave them at home when they're leaving? And what are the things that Shari will be doing in terms of collection, and what are we thinking of doing?
First of all, I want to thank the many people who are asking that question. I know we all want to do things and be, as Shel Silverstein says, the kind of help that helping's all about, right? We want to send the things that are helpful. And that's why we were super specific earlier this week, where we were like, please don't send random things. Please send these things, because that's what we were told was needed. And I can tell you on the ground that those were the things that were needed. Amy, you and I need to touch base offline. You may have more up-to-date new information than I do. We would like to potentially continue to do collections, but we only want to do that if we have a good partner who can get the supplies from the synagogue, from the corner of 79th and 2nd to the people that need them. So I want to encourage you, unless Amy, you're going to tell me that something has changed today, which is possible it has. I've been doing other things today, that please hold off for a minute on bringing more stuff. We are looking at the ways that we could not only collect stuff, because we know you could clear the shelves at Costco and Target and all the places. We know that you can, but we only want to do that when we know that we can tell you that the stuff is going to get there in an efficient way. I will say that for right now, and then I'll pause, and Amy, if you have any updates, you can let me know. One of the things that makes AFIA Foundation a great option, if what you want to do right now is get stuff there, is that if you go on the AFIA Foundation website, they have an Amazon wish list. So what that means is you would buy anything else on Amazon, you click on the thing that you want to buy, and it goes right to AFIA, and AFIA gets it right there. You don't have to go and buy the thing and bring it to the synagogue, and the synagogue gets it to somebody who can get it there. That's the thing that you can do if what you want to do right now is get stuff. So don't bring stuff to the synagogue yet, unless Amy Schwach tells me right now that you can bring stuff to the synagogue, in which case you should listen.
Not yet, but I am seeing a lot of chats from Jen, Wendy, and Mindy Tyndall who are saying we have a specific list and we'll announce it soon to work with AFIA to get needed supplies distributed at the temple. So we will be working on that, absolutely. And we are certainly coordinating a way to get all of the supplies we currently have at the temple where they're needed. So that is what I was working on today.
Awesome. Friends, thank you. Thanks for being up with me. I guess it's only 7 o'clock there. So, but thank you for all of your support. I have to tell you that I have been so buoyed by your support of my journey, which is really our journey. And I invite you to be with us on Friday night, where I will have more formed and slightly more, have had slightly more sleep and slightly more organized thoughts about this journey and about the work that we can do coming ahead. So thanks to all of you for being with us. Thanks to Amy for coordinating and hosting. And I will look forward to seeing you all on Shabbat if you can be there. We'll see you soon. Thanks, my friend. My friends, thanks for being with us.